Hello, and welcome back to my podcast and my blog. Today, we're going to go through one of my new pieces of writing. And that piece of writing is about a reflection on life and life's journey, life's path, finding gratitudes in the mundane. And if that's something that you want to plug into, tune in, have in your background, your environment, stick around as we get straight into it. Inside the author's world is what I'm calling this because when writing, I realized a lot of the time it takes a lot of inner work when you have to cultivate your growth moving forward, bringing stories together, but also in standing grounded in your own story. And that's why I titled this piece The Inner Author's World. I have more exciting blogs to go through in the future, but today I felt for something calming. And this one is all about I did not plan to live with my mom. The cage I created that helped me, bless me, to be productive. There are parts of adulthood that you imagined will unfold in a certain order. You imagine becoming independent, building your own home, creating your own routines, earning your own money, traveling, and moving forward into the next chapter of your life with a sense of certainty. You imagine that by a certain age, you would have figured out where you belong, what is your life supposed to look like, and then life does what it does. It lives. It rearranges the furniture, it changes the timing, it places you somewhere you never expected to be. And suddenly you find yourself looking at a life that bears a little resemblance to the one you thought you were supposed to have. I'd always imagined something different for myself. Internally, I saw myself traveling, earning as a nomad, a professional woman who could move through the world with freedom, create, earn, travel, write, speak, and experience different places without feeling permanently tied down to one location. I wanted a life that felt expansive. I wanted the ability to wake up and decide where I wanted to go next. I wanted that freedom to do what I wanted whenever I wanted. I wanted movement to feel natural, not like an escape, but I wanted a life that I felt I could travel, work wherever. Yet, no matter how much I wanted that life and how many efforts I made towards building it, I found myself positioned back in my small island hometown, living at my mum's house. At the time, I could not understand it. Sometimes I still don't understand it. But then I think a little deeper, and there are traditional parts of me that do want this life stage to be the stage that I'm at before I take my next step into my next life stage, which is marriage and kids and family. I did the living on my own for a good number of years. I've lived with roommates. And this also is a good chat if you have lived with roommates, if you've rented before, because having roommates and moving and having renting experiences creates a lot of stories and you learn different habits and routines that people have. And then when you live at home, it's still kind of like having a roommate, but you're a different version of yourself, and so is your quote unquote roommate. There are days where I still find it deeply limiting, especially as I look around and I see that it seems easy for many professional single adults in their 30s to build lives abroad, become immigrants, move between countries, create great working opportunities to live nomadic lifestyles, traveling around the world. I have wondered, what would it have cost me to build that kind of life earlier? I have wondered whether my family had some kind of hold on me that I couldn't see clearly at the time. I have wondered what might have become if I created a world outside of my mum's house sooner. And that's where it took me because I started my office at my mum's house in a room in front of her garage. And that is where I got some of my first clients for my brand, where I would write meal plans for my clients and I would have a gym on our porch and people would come and work out with me. And that's how we began as, the neighborhood gym and nutritionist. And it was fun. It was a cool community. We'd have smoothies and coffees, but you can't really have a shop in a neighborhood like that. I wanted to have a cafe and it wasn't really like permission friendly. I always imagined just being in a place where I would live where I worked because that is how I got started. And everything was built for the most part here in terms of groundwork. It was only when I lived on my own that I was able to complete my book because I had a writing process that I needed to develop while I was away, that I couldn't develop here because I required further experts and different environments. As you might know, with many authors, they choose to rent hotels and apartments and buildings to get pieces of work done. And Barbados is one of those destinations that a lot of authors do go to complete their books. At least that was my first book. And when I published my first book, then I realized many authors publish many books, and that would not necessarily have to be my only publication. I wondered about the versions of myself that might have existed elsewhere. The woman who moved abroad, the woman who built a career in another country, the woman who traveled constantly, the woman who got a dream job with a dream group of people, the woman who lived alone, met different people, created a life that had no connection to the place where she was born. I can imagine these versions of myself, but I cannot know them. I cannot compare the life I lived with the life I might have lived because I can only experience one life and timeline at any given time. I do not know whether I would have been happier somewhere else. I do not know whether I would have been more wealthy, richer, more successful, more loved, more fulfilled. I do not know whether the freedom I imagined would actually give me what I believed it would. I am accustomed to living a certain way on my own schedule since I'm 20 years old. I work as a professional with booked appointments, my sleep schedule, my creative writing schedule as a writer, my publications, my blog. I haven't had to be on someone else's demand necessarily, except with helping around the house a little bit, contributing to cleaning and so forth. I could not imagine if I was in a different location that I would have a different set of rules to follow from someone else or someone else's expectations. Those are entire versions of myself that exist only now as an imagination or a previous train of thought. The woman I might have become if circumstances had unfolded differently. I can wonder about them, but I cannot meet them. What I do know is that somehow I ended up here. And almost everyone around me seemed to believe that this was somehow for my best interest. At the time, I could not see it. I still question it. I really liked my life in Barbados. I liked the health community. I liked my gym. I liked my regular menu choices. I liked what I was building. I liked a lot of it. But when I look carefully at what has actually happened to me during this unexpected past 3 years, I have to admit that something extraordinary has taken place. I have bloomed. And perhaps more surprisingly, I am genuinely impressed with the woman I see emerging. I like how I look. I like how I feel. I like the way my energy has changed. My brand feels cleaner, more organized, more intentional. My relationship with my family has improved. I've become less interested in the party scene and more interested in health, longevity, beauty, anti-aging, strength, movement, sleep, and the quiet discipline of taking care of myself before crisis forces me to. I've also become increasingly intentional about how I want to experience aging. I've spent a great deal of time around older people, and that proximity has changed my understanding of what it means to grow older. Aging is not some distant event that happens to other people. It is a process that begins the moment we are born. And I have become interested in creating my experience of it rather than approaching it passively. I want to look the way I look because I have worked hard to care for myself. I want to feel lean and strong because I have invested into my health. I want to enjoy beauty because I genuinely value it. I want to dress well because fashion and personal presentation have become part of my creative language. These things are not distractions from my life to me. They are part of the life I'm choosing to create. Perhaps not everyone understands that. Perhaps even people close to me have questioned the amount of attention I give to health, beauty, anti-aging, clothing, spending time with people who did not go to high school with me, and as though caring about these things must mean that I'm automatically vain or that it's for vanity reasons. I see it differently. I've spent enough time witnessing the realities of aging to know I would rather be intentional than surprised. I would rather invest in my body, the body that I live in, the way that I present myself, and the quality of my daily life because those things matter to me. I'm not interested in pretending that beauty is the only thing that matters because I know it's not. But I also refuse to pretend that it means nothing to me. I refuse to make myself less attractive and not grooming myself to make other people comfortable. I like what I like. I find value in it. I find joy in it. I find discipline in it. I find creative expression and a healthy grooming practice in these routines and habits. I have come to believe that there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to age well, dress beautifully, feel your best, or create an environment that reflects the person you're becoming. In fact, it is one of the greatest gifts of this chapter, which has been fashion. I have never imagined that I would become so interested in design. I never expected to learn so much about clothing, styling, proportion, materials, silhouettes, visual identity, and personal presentation. I began investing in my wardrobe, and it's custom made because spending time with my grandparents have taught me that even though it's old-fashioned, I quite enjoy that process. And if it has been passed down to me as part of our family culture, I welcome it in. I realized that I was not simply buying clothes anymore. I was learning design, and I really liked that Barbados gave me that foundation to learn the language of fashion. I had written down over 10 years ago that I wanted to have a fashion line. I didn't know how it would come together. Now we have drop shipping, which is exciting, and I could design and have products on demand. I've explored whether I want to have a initial investment of stock and have stock in my physical reality or keep it as drop shipping. And through modeling, even though I'm 5'3" and I'm very petite, it taught me a lot about design that I find invaluable, and also how I like to carry myself in my body as a woman. And I was learning to how to dress my body, how to dress different silhouettes, what looks good on different body shapes, sizes, not just myself. And many things that I do learn from myself, I learn from myself to be able to also communicate to people, especially my clients or people in the world who might also want to upgrade their personal brand, style, fashion, to be able to personalize each human with a mannerism of dressing to fit and suit your body type. And so I had to learn my body type, which is quite a unique small frame body type, and to what works good on my body, and how to create or construct a personal image, since many of the generic sizes might not fit me, and there are unique principles that I had to learn for my stature. And I was learning to construct and communicate this image to have it more so without having to speak too much about it. I was learning that fashion is architecture for the body. Personal style could be another form of authorship. That discovery has completely changed the way I see myself. The woman who once thought she was simply developing a personal image is now beginning to understand she has had an instinct for visual storytelling. From start to finish, from the set, from the outfits to the lighting. I don't think I would have discovered that without the space that I've had in this chapter living here with my mom. Now, I wonder if it is my mom in particular, and shout out to her, or if it is that it is a relationship of mom and child or offspring. However, it has shown me the power of that relationship when some things don't make sense in the world. You know, my mom has always claimed me as hers, and she's made me always feel like you belong here, no matter what, no matter how, if we disagree on things. And that gives a certain sense of security. And similarly, when her mum was alive and learning mannerisms, as our history had gone into boarding schools in Barbados with them also. And the same thing happened with my voice. I spent time refining my voice, and it did a lot for me having this quiet time that I found a little less lonely having a roommate to get that special work done. I have written, I have read, I have spoken, I have sang, I've written songs, I've thought, I've drafted, I've created, I've researched, I've developed ideas that needed somewhere to go. Somewhere along the way, I realized that I had enough material, enough emotion, enough perspective, and enough things I wanted to say to begin creating something I never expected to have the space to create. I drafted 2 music albums. 2. That still surprises me. Drafted, nothing is final, but I do like the content and the lyrics, and I enjoy the beats. I did not set out to become the person who would sit quietly in a private space to develop enough of a voice to draft 2, maybe 2.5 albums, almost 3 by now. But I did. And it tells me something. It tells me that when there was a creative life inside of me, it needed to have a space to channel and flow in a methodical, strategic routine with coaches or principals to feedback on. Perhaps I had spent years thinking my energy was scattered when in reality it was simply waiting for enough space for me to reveal its shape. And it required support. It required a person to chit chat with in between my long, uninterrupted hours. It required just another human presence as I lived alone for quite some time. I remember living alone and saying, I'm going to cherish this alone time so much because I know I'll never live alone again. And that I did. I really did cherish my alone time. Eventually, I found the channels. Writing became a channel, publishing became a channel, reading became a channel, speaking became a channel, thinking became a channel, creativity became a channel, fashion became a channel, music became a channel, my personal brand became a channel. The things that once felt like scattered pieces of my personality began to come together and form something that looked much more like a creative life. I've realized that I'm not just one thing. I'm not only a writer or a brand or only interested in beauty or only interested in fashion or only interested in health or only interested in anti-aging or music or just business. All of these things are connected through my voice. And they all are part of the brand in their different elements, strategically and simultaneously. For years, I thought perhaps I need to choose one identity. And I did. I refined my identity of what I was going to become through curation. And each time I would invest strategically on an image that I find that I'm happy with. And now I need to build an ecosystem. Perhaps this is what this unexpected lifetime has given me, the space to discover the ecosystem. That reminds me now of a place in Barbados called Eco Lodge. And I always felt like that was kind of the perfect place for me. Like a place like that would have never existed for me in Trinidad. So the Eco Lodge in Barbados was up on the East Coast. and the menu was all healthy, gluten-free. You can get vegan calamari made with coconuts. You get the best grilled fish tacos, and the chef is almost like a vegan Michelin star chef. The location is breezy. They would have Pilates on the deck. It's also like a hotel, and they have a sauna as well. And it's just a perfect location group that I felt like I belong here. These are my people. And I didn't feel like anybody else belonged in my life at that time. Like, that's how much I connected in that place. And that was set on this is my life. And there was a time I thought love was almost a free concept. I approached it with the spirit of a hippie, I suppose. I believed in love, but I did not necessarily understand the seriousness of relationships in maturity and what it takes to raise a family, or the selection process to choose like a husband material versus a surfer boy. There's so many cute surfer boys. They all look like models and Ken dolls. You just can't know unless you know. I did not take boys particularly seriously either, because somewhere in my mind, I imagined that when it was the right time, the right man who was serious would show up with gifts and diamonds and speak to my parents and make it happen. And anything less than that, I found it difficult to take seriously. I was not interested in building a man from the ground up, but I also didn't mind building with a man once there was a commitment first. If there was no commitment, I was definitely not interested in building anybody up. I imagined a man who already knew who he was to a degree, a man who had the capacity to build, a man who could walk into my life with the maturity to communicate, stability, resources, and an understanding of my brand and how it would fit into his life and how it would work simultaneously for both of our best interests. And that would be enough resources to create something substantial and meaningful. In my imagination, there are houses, real estate, diamonds, and a beautiful life. I never really thought I was supposed to spend my best years trying to convince a boy to become a man that I wanted. I thought it would just flow. You build a life together. That was the next stage. After you're single for so long, you create a space that you think the next guy who enters, it just moves to the next life stage. But if it's a Ken doll or a boy toy, you don't understand that this person is not in the husband category. This is not one to take seriously unless you know in advance. So I played, I flirted, I explored. I didn't take it too seriously. But now when I look back, I realize that perhaps I was doing a little more than playing. I was developing, I was becoming. Spending time with people teaches me a lot. It acts as a space to reflect back on myself, my journey. And I was studying, and having a companion or someone to chit chat to when you're bored is quite nice, whether it ends up in something serious or not. Little did I know that's a waste of time to a degree, because then you finish your work and then you have to figure out then what. And you haven't really thought about something serious because you get accustomed to something frivolous. So I was building a brand and developing my personal image while trying to understand who I was, what do I have to offer the world, refining, developing, becoming. And my energy is moving in, I would say it was moving in the right direction. I wouldn't say it was moving in 100 directions. And I was organizing it actually, because what I will say is my energy is vast. And with a bottleneck that I showed in one of the previous episodes, you would notice that as a person of what I do, you end up managing a lot under one umbrella. So it's just a little bit like my energy is explosive, maybe, or it's strong or intense, but it goes into quite a few places. And I'll show you a bit now where it goes, because this is how I've designed my skeleton system, if I may. And we use Microsoft here, it's what I build. So every time my energy is like, feels like it's going in 100 directions, it's going into all of this. Is very organized. And it goes all the way into there. So it's not so much that it goes in 100 directions, it's in an organized place and different categories, but that is a brand. A brand has all of that with the bottleneck. So you can't really say that it's scattered. Like I never personally felt that it was scattered, but to somebody communicating with me who is focused on a very traditional wake up, do the normal job 9 to 5, it might come across a bit scattered to that person. But for an entrepreneur, I feel like it's pretty normal, my energy, and I see my energy was never really the problem. I think what it required was somebody to show up consistently and to be around me consistently so that I would have that grounding to be able to channel it more efficiently where it needed to go. And so I did try to have partnerships, but it did not flow. And my mom and my grandmom were very influential at the beginning of my building of my brand. So it kind of made sense that I would come back here because they did help me at the beginning to put through a lot of the groundwork. And I learned a lot from my mom. She's a great woman. And there are personality traits that she has that I find lovely, but not who I am. But they're nice to aspire towards because it's lovely things that she does. And she has great taste and great style, and she's into flowers and that sort of thing. And she's very strict, so I don't have much of the freedom that I had in Barbados per se to kind of do whatever I want and enjoy that student life. However, I noticed that it seems to be working out for me, having these healthy routines. It makes me healthier because she's that strict. So sometimes it's hard, but to be in such a strict environment, but I appreciate it because I personally value discipline. So I created this private space and it gives me space and time to write, publish, develop ideas, explore fashion, do my YouTube. And that's been my dream. So since I was 20, this is the kind of everything I ever wanted. At a larger, I mean, at least as a level one, the next level would be to scale it and to really take it off the ground and make it more. But at a ground level, there is something deeply powerful about having a place where you can hear your own thoughts and without having to immediately explain yourself to anyone, and a place where an idea could be messy before it becomes refined and then intelligent. A place where you can sit with yourself long enough to discover what you actually think. And I needed that. I needed the quiet, I needed the structure, I needed the walls. In some ways, I did create that cage for myself to give myself a reason to say no to things that I found it would have been too hard to say no to, given I had that level of freedom. And then after I finish feeling like I've created enough for my vault, I would let myself free. But it didn't have like a time frame or like a expected time for when that would be, or when I felt like I had created enough or done enough exploring of my talents or skills, or what I could build with my website or learn or study. But I just created it because I needed somewhere to become productive, and being productive makes me feel fulfilled. So I needed fewer distractions and less noise. I needed to stop scattering myself across groups, parties, relationships, social situations, and experiences that were not necessarily bringing me closer to the person I wanted to become. So I built a smaller world. And inside that smaller world, I began producing. I read more, I wrote more, I thought more deeply, I developed more, I became more organized. I started to understand the difference between simply having an image and actually building a brand. I started to understand the difference between having energy and knowing how to direct that energy, and where to position that energy and how to channel it in the ways that I find to be most fulfilling to me with the best return. Now, there's something almost masterful about learning how to own your own energy and not suppressing it, not giving it away randomly, not letting it leak, not allowing every or any person, party, relationship, or distraction to have access to it, but also learning to direct it towards something that can actually grow. That has become an art I genuinely enjoy, yet I'm also beginning to understand that I cannot live in my cage forever. I created the cage to become more productive. I didn't create it to become disconnected from life. It almost like gives me a pause on life to do a bunch of refined work now, because I understand the future includes more people that I might not have that opportunity again to really give myself that isolated focus time. I could be wrong, but I'd rather do it now than later. So there's a difference between solitude and isolation, and I'm learning that difference now. I do not want to become so private that I lose touch with reality. I don't want to become so absorbed in my own thoughts that I become blind to the relationships that are healthy for me. I want to be able to see what relationships are healthy for me. I want to protect my energy, but not so aggressively that I stop allowing anything new to enter. I like having the opportunity and ability to discern what I want in my energy and what I don't. Because the truth is that people inspire my work. New travels inspire my work. New events inspire my work. Life inspires my work. Conversation inspires my work. Travel inspires my work. Being around the right people can take me deeper into myself. And the right connections do not pull me away from my creativity. They feed it. They give me new perspectives. They introduce me to ideas I might never have encountered alone. They challenge the way I think. They remind me to be aware that I'm still part of a living, breathing world beyond the walls of my own mind. I need that world. I need real conversations. I need real experiences. I need to meet people who make me think differently. I prefer, after being on the social scene for so long, I prefer having this channel, my book, when I'm meeting people. Like, I prefer having things, not meeting people empty-handed per se, or with nothing in my back pocket. Like, I prefer when it is time to be in the world again, I'm in the world with this is what I do, this is what I create, this is what I'm about. I'm not necessarily just in the world floating, because I've spent time doing that already and I find it empty. I find it empty. That's what I find. So I got bored of that. I am bored of empty experiences. So that's why I do things like this. And I need to see places I've never seen before. And I do need the freedom to travel when I desire it. I need beauty, culture, movement, and surprise. I need to be able to be in unfamiliar places sometimes because there are parts of myself I will never discover by remaining the same in the same environment forever, of course. My work comes from living. It comes from observing people. It comes from conversations. It comes from uncomfortable moments and beautiful moments. It comes from being surprised and it comes from seeing how other people live. It comes from discovering that there's more than one way to exist in the world. So I'm learning that I do not actually want a smaller life. I want a more intentional one. I want the room to write and the freedom to travel and to travel luxuriously in high standards, not student level travel, adult level travel. I don't want to just have places checked off my bucket list of locations that I've been to. I want to experience these locations at a very high level standard. I want the discipline of routine and the spontaneity of discovery. I want a private creative world and a meaningful human connection. I want to be able to close the door and work, but I also want to be able to open the door and go somewhere. I want to retreat when I need to create and explore when I need to experience. I do not want to destroy the structure that helps me to grow. I want to expand it. Perhaps the cage was not really a cage. Perhaps it was a greenhouse. A greenhouse is not built to imprison a plant. It is built to protect something while it is becoming strong enough for a larger world. And I think that is what this chapter has been for me. A protected environment where I could become productive, organized, creative, healthier, more reflective, and more aware of myself. A place where I could discover parts of myself I did not even know were waiting. A place where I could find my voice. But a greenhouse is not the world. Eventually, the plant has to experience the weather. It has to feel the wind. And wind is one of those things that is very therapeutic to me. I love the wind and the breeze. It is one of my favorite elements in life. Not when you just get your hair and makeup done, but certainly when you want to rock back and lay low and chill out after the dulled up part of the world. And it has to grow beyond the walls that once protected it. And I think I'm somewhere in that transition now. I am somewhere between building and living. I'm building a brand while trying to actually live a life worth documenting. I'm creating privately while learning how to connect publicly. I'm becoming more disciplined while still allowing myself to experience pleasure. Pleasure in the little things. I eat healthy meals. I take in the breeze, I walk around, I do my stretches. I'm becoming more selective. I'm protecting my energy while learning that not every connection is a threat to it. Some connections nourish you, some connections drain you, some relationships expand your thinking, while others slowly reduce your sense of possibility. I'm learning to tell the difference. And that discernment matters more to me now than ever before. I don't have tolerance for the BS, and I don't have tolerance for people that cost me my peace, or if things stress me out, or aggravate me, or taunt me, or tease me, or tell me upsetting news. I prefer to block that out, keep my creative zone clear, my energy clear, and protect it away from that because I'm genuinely not interested in knowing any of that information. And I also don't want to be aware of anything that has nothing to do with me or is none of my business. And it's not going to contribute positively or add value to my work or life or brand. And that discernment is very important to me because you have to put your foot down sometimes and say, no, that's not welcome in this space. I worked very hard to create this space. There's a certain rule and standard. And if you've never been to Eco Lodge, you might not have the awareness of what that means, but anything less or different, I don't know if I'm open to it because I really like Eco Lodge standards. And I wouldn't have anything less than that. So when it comes to becoming more of an honest person about the life I'm building, it costs a lot. So what it costs, my books cost money, my education costs money, my routines, my beauty and wellness costs money, my travel costs money, my creative projects cost money, my equipment costs money, my time costs money. My brand development costs something. Even the social experiences that inspire me cost me something. My fashion design costs me. Everything costs me. And these are expensive interests when viewed purely through the lens of an immediate financial return. Publishing a book can cost between 5,000 US per book. Developing a wardrobe that reflects the woman I'm becoming costs. Investing in my health and longevity costs. Creating music costs. Traveling costs. Building a professional brand costs. Websites costs. Online businesses costs. I have invested in myself in ways that do not always come with a guaranteed financial outcome. I am beginning to understand that not every investment pays me back immediately in dollars. Some investments pay me in perspective. Some pay me in confidence. Some pay me in health. Some pay me in creativity. Some pay me in relationship. Some pay me in ideas. Some pay me in the ability to imagine a different future. Some investments simply make life more interesting. And that is where I'm positioned now. I'm in a strange but beautiful middle ground between building and living. I prefer if I'm going to have an experience, it has to be a really 10 out of 10 experience. Otherwise, I'm very content to sit down and read a book or do this. I prefer if I'm going to spend or invest my time, energy, money in something, it has to be worth it to me. And if it's not worth it to me, then I don't want to do it because I don't feel like it's serving me. If I feel like I can bring value to something that I'm invited to, and then I become more of the investor of I'm investing my time here while it's not a 10 out of 10 experience, but I'm giving my time, space, and energy. That is a different perspective. But I go into that situation knowing and understanding what that is, that it's not for me, because if it was for me, it would be a 10 out of 10 experience. I'm creating work that might or might not immediately produce financial return. And I'm completely aware of that. I'm developing ideas that might or might not become businesses. I'm investing in things that might or might not become profitable for me. But I'm also becoming the woman who might eventually know what to do with an opportunity when it arrives. And that is why increasing my revenue matters to me. And it matters to me even more because growing up in a single mom household, there was always room for us to have more, do more, and for me to be able to be a provider in that sense. And so that was innately developed in me from a young age. My ambition came from wanting to support myself and my mother to live a good life. And that is why my life has been a bit harder and why I have been a little more ambitious, because it's driven me to do these things. And it's my way of thanking her for, her number one goal in life is to be a mom. So it's just saying thank you the best way I can. And therefore, increasing my revenue matters a lot to me. I do not want money simply for the sake of having more money. I want the freedom to create what money can create. I want access to travel, beautiful environments, take my mom traveling if I want someone to accompany me. The world has shown me a few things, and when people show up, she's always shown up for me. I can't discount that. And I would not want to see that in a position to be made to feel taken for granted, because that is valuable. I've lived on the other side of that in a world where nobody can care about you. Nobody will show up for you. And then you live in a world where someone does show up for you all the time. And it's not something you take for granted. And that experience does expand my imagination, because while I want the freedom to move when I need to move, I want to be able to build a business that gives me choices. I want my brand to create opportunities to allow me to move through the world. I want to fund my work, my lifestyle, my family. I want to fund a lifestyle that feeds my work. I want to be able to travel somewhere new, experience something extraordinary, and return home with a new idea. I want the freedom to say yes to the right experiences without constantly wondering whether I can afford them. Because I'm beginning to see that my life and my work are not separate, but at the same time, I do always separate brand from real person, because you need to be able, as a business owner or brand owner, to always have that separation, but you can still intertwine the two when necessary. My life is not the source material. My experiences become my ideas. My ideas become my writing. My writing becomes my publishing. My publishing becomes my brand. My brand becomes my business. And my businesses should eventually give me the freedom to go back into the world, gather more experiences, create, experience, reflect, create again. And this is the cycle that I want, and that I create, and that I enjoy. This is going to be a 4 to 5, maybe 6 episode series. So if you like this and you're connecting, like and subscribe, because there's going to be more. And there's another part of this chapter that I'm still learning to understand, the relationship between independence and interdependence and partnership. Because there's a level of independence I've had to innately cultivate to be in this position in a single parent household. At the same time, when it's time for me to have that relationship, there's a level of interdependence and a level of submission that is also cultivated, but it's not given without diamonds. That is a reserved part of myself that exists, but I don't have to give it to anybody. It's on reserve because there are no commitments on the table. And that I'm aware of. I've increasingly become aware that I do not simply want someone just to occupy space beside me. I want a man whose presence makes sense with the life that I'm building. I want someone who understands that my standards are not a demand for perfection, but a desire for coherence. I want to know that if I choose a partner, I'm choosing someone whose values, lifestyle, ambition, communication, and capacity for commitment can actually coexist with mine. I've learned that two people can care deeply about one another and still be fundamentally mismatched. A person can be a wonderful teacher, a good roommate, a meaningful chapter, and still not be the person with whom you should build a marriage. That realization has changed the way I think about relationships. I no longer want to confuse convenience with compatibility. I no longer want to mistake companionship for partnership. I no longer want to choose someone simply because they're nearby, available, attractive, or willing to fill an empty afternoon. I want to understand what I'm choosing. I want to understand the life we would be building. I want to know whether the man I choose would actually choose me in the same consistent, deliberate way and be okay with how I want to be chosen, the process in which I would like it to unfold, the marriage, the commitment, then, dating for 9 to 12 months, then, building that emotional intimacy first and then moving into the physical. There's a certain process that I feel is the best and that I wanted to cultivate. At the same time, I also want to be pursued by somebody in how they naturally want to pursue and to be wowed and to really enjoy that process of being pursued and courted in that mature, intentional manner. And I think it's romantic to wait until after marriage to get into the physical. I think there's something about building that I find valuable when getting to know somebody, that you get to know somebody deep as a person before getting deeply intimate on the physical levels. I've also become more aware that I want to be more intentional about the kind of relationship I build, and that would explain what I just said. And in that process, I want to understand how a man communicates when there's no physical convenience holding us together. I want to know how he handles distance, uncertainty, conflict, planning, travel, finances, family, commitment, before our lives become so intertwined physically that separating becomes painful just because we've invested years being familiar and to be familiarized with a body that will not be your forever body that you are with. To me, that's a waste of time and energy to have to then remove all of that energy, create new space again, and then bring in your final person. Whereas the way that I see it is you create all that space and energy and you clear the space and energy, and then you build something in a nice space and energy, and then you get the legal, and then you get gold and diamonds, well, legal gold and diamonds. Then you could get all the church stuff, and then you get into the forever bond. I mean, I don't think that's too much to ask. I think it makes perfect sense to me, but it takes a certain type of person to understand the value in that. And I guess not many people are willing to do that work because that is ambition in itself. And that's hard. It's a sacrifice. I feel like when you ask someone, well, what are you willing to sacrifice for me? There might be some sacrifices that you find worth it and some sacrifices you find not worth it. And to me, that would be a sacrifice I find worth it. But if a guy does not understand that, then I'm not interested. Or if you find different sacrifices worth it, then there's probably somebody else for you, and that's fine. I want to build that emotional intimacy first before allowing physical proximity to make decisions for us. I want to know whether the man I'm genuinely with intends to build a life with me rather than simply enjoying a rebound or rebounding, or me using them as a rebound, or just to fill boredom, space, time, rather than simply enjoying the relationship while it remains convenient, short term. People now are dating for short-term reasons, long-term, or marriage. They're different intentions when making connections. And you have to be upfront with what you're building and communicate these things early on, I think. And then you get into the fun games and the flirting and you flirt, and it gets fun. But I think to me, it makes sense to take all that psychological work off first, clear that space, and then you get into all the nice stuff. But that's just what makes sense to me. I could be wrong, but that's what makes sense to me. And two people can live in different countries and still be deeply committed to each other. FaceTiming regularly helps. That's very normal. Having online calls and that intimacy really builds, which I quite like that as a process because you feel safe in a private call. And that the geography matters, but the intention matters more. I want a relationship where the pursuit is clear, the intention is visible, and where I'm not constantly wondering whether I'm being chosen or if there are options or people are doing rotations. And that's not my style. I want to feel secure enough. Otherwise, I choose to be single and just work because I don't see the point of that. I want to feel secure enough to continue living my life on my own, write, create, work, travel, develop my interests, and care for myself without wondering whether the relationship is quietly disappearing while I'm looking the other way. Life as a writer and a creative means I might block out 5 hours at a time just to be in my own world. I want to trust that I'm being deeply pursued in the right way, that when I pursue my work or if I meditate for an hour, my man is not thinking I'm not giving him attention and going to look elsewhere. And I think that's the difference between a man pursuing a woman or a woman pursuing a man, because if a woman pursues a guy, I feel like it's not secure enough for a woman to feel long term, like when there's pregnancy and there are moments where she has to deal with children. You always want to feel like your man is pursuing you. And that is just a safe feeling of manliness, because as a woman, you are not built to do that kind of pursuing, is my perspective. That's my perspective of how I see it. And I want to know that the man I'm with has already decided that the partnership is something he genuinely wants and is prepared to build and go the distance and meet me where I am and invest in me. Perhaps this is also why I have become more conscious about how I've chosen relationships in the past, or tried to choose relationships in the past, because there were times when I felt confused with convenience versus connection, attraction versus compatibility, companionship or partnership. And sometimes I chose people because they were available in the moment. I was bored. I wanted someone to talk to. I wanted company, transport, food, entertainment, or simply someone to share an afternoon with. And I don't feel like those are really valid reasons for my future. I did not always ask myself whether I was actually choosing a life partner or the father of my children or a good solid man or a good provider. Those things didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even think the distinction, has become clearer to me with age. But a person can be useful to your life conveniently, but not suitable for your future. A person can be enjoyable without being compatible. A person can make you feel wanted without being capable of building what you need. And I think I'm finally learning to ask a deeper question. What am I actually choosing this person for? And what are they choosing me for? And these questions have changed everything. So I also want to give more of my energy to my mom because living with her has made me think about what it means to appreciate the person who's been there, who calls me, who shows up, who's my biggest fan. I want to see how I can contribute to her life, her health, her retirement, not from a place of obligation or guilt, but from genuine appreciation. I want to see what is possible when women in two different life stages decide they're still allowed to transform and live, especially if our genetics take us to living long lives and healthy. She has been the one person who has shown me health and wellness from the beginning. I want to encourage her to take care of herself, think about her health, her beauty, her environment, and her own sense of possibility, and to create moments with her that are not simply about sharing a physical space and living independent lives, but sharing a life where eventually she'll become the grandmother of my kids. She's takes care of my cat. My cat loves her. She's great with animals. She's great with kids. And I would love to see technology, if we can invest into technology for her injuries, these things. I wonder how to get her body into a better physical shape. Is that possible? So I want to become someone who can give too, not from depletion, but from overflow. And that is the woman I want to become, and a woman with enough energy to create, enough discipline, protect my health, her health, enough confidence to build serious business, enough softness to love her family, enough standards to choose her relationships carefully, enough wisdom to understand that attention is not the same thing as love, enough ambition to increase her revenue, increase structure, to turn her brand into an actual business, enough self-respect to stop chasing what does not align, just to learn a skill or to see a new environment or to travel to a different destination. And enough imagination to build a life that does not have to look like everybody else's, but one that I deeply desire, want, and need. Perhaps that is also why I have become more conscious about what I've removed from my life. I've become less interested in going out and drinking and partying, not only because it doesn't make me feel good, but I'm less willing to give my energy to relationships that do not nourish me. Less interested in performing a lifestyle simply because it looks impressive, less interested in chasing attention just for having attention's sake. I'm less willing to confuse romantic chemistry with actual compatibility, less available to people who expect access to me without contributing anything meaningful to my life. Those removals have created space, and space for me to develop a brand that actually feels like me. Perhaps this is the real lesson of this chapter. My life has been giving me data. Every improvement is data. Every loss is data. Every relationship is data. Every habit is data. Every moment of calm, stability, data. Depletion, data. Creative breakthrough, data. Every time I feel more like myself, it's data. I don't have to judge all of it. I don't have to pay attention. I have to pay attention to what I want to pay attention to. Then I have to make better decisions. And while those decisions make sense to me, I don't owe you a reason why I make my decisions that make sense to me, just because you don't understand the way that I make decisions. And I want to study carefully for the rest of this year because I want to understand specifically what works for me, what has been working for me, and what have I gotten rid of that was quietly working against me. I want to identify the conditions under which I thrive rather than simply assuming that the life that looks successful from the outside is necessarily the life that's right for me. I know that I thrive with structure. I know that I thrive with consistency, with presence, with health, healthy habits. I know that I create more when I have this quiet space that's guarded. I know that my creativity expands when I have space. I know that reading makes me think differently. I know that writing helps me to understand myself. I know fashion and design have awakened part of my creativity that I never expected, and it makes me feel more feminine and fun, and I love it as a hobby. I know that I have enough material inside of me to draft 2 music albums, a fashion line, 4 new books, and I know that I have a voice that deserves to be developed. I know that meaningful conversations make my work richer. I know that travel expands my imagination. I know that healthy relationships inspire me. I know that family matters to me. I know that health and appearance affect how I feel about myself. I know that I want longevity. I know that I want financial growth. And I know that I want my brand to become more professional. I know that I want my creative work to become more commercially valuable. And I know that I want to become so focused on building a future that I don't want to become so focused on building a future that I forget to experience the present. Although I do have so much fun building a future that sometimes the present is really boring, but this passing time is working for me to do this. And my next chapter does not need to be one of rejection. It needs to be one of evolution. It needs to be that I didn't abandon the woman that I became, or I didn't abandon any versions of myself. I stepped into my new body, my transformation, fully ready, at ease, in love with life and who I've become as all of this growth has compounded. And I need to take everything I learned in this small island life and use it to build on a larger one. I need to keep the discipline without the confinement, the solitude without the isolation, the beauty without the performance, the ambition without the desperation, the relationships without the chaos, the creativity without the financial naivety, the freedom without the lack of structure, the health without obsession, the love without losing myself, the money without making it my identity, and the travel without running away from life. Now, many entrepreneurs have personalities of obsession because you would have to be obsessed to do all the things that I listed that I just did within 3 years. It's just how it is. It's just channeling that obsession healthily, and that is the difference. And in the right places, definitely not wasting it on people that don't have anything to give in return. But I could also make another music album, for example. And I'm going to make a lot of these podcasts. So that's fine with me because I wanted to do this anyway. So perhaps the goal was never to escape the island. The goal was to become expansive enough that the island could no longer define the size of my world. I still want to be traveling, earning money traveling. I still want to see the world, build a successful professional life, publish my books, publish my music, explore my fashion, sell clothes, build a beautiful home. I want comfortable sofas and a breezy view. I still do want that love and partnership. I still want to experience, I still want to create, still want to come home. But now I understand that perhaps the life I imagined and the life I was given do not have to compete with each other. Maybe this chapter was not the end of the world that I wanted. It was just a place where I learned how to create the woman who would eventually move through the world a bit differently. Maybe I needed to be here long enough to discover I could write books, develop my voice, draft my music, learn design, understand fashion, build my brand, become healthier, deepen relationship with my family, direct my energy, become more selective about love or relationship or partnerships, and become more intentional about my finance, where I want to spend, what gives me the best return on that investment, and what makes me happy to spend on, and become more conscious about what I actually need from my life. I don't know exactly where it will go from here, but I know what I'm taking with me is everything I've built. The discipline, creativity, the voice, the books, the ambition. I want to charge this. And the music, the modeling, and I want to create a space where I could become more organized, productive, healthier, more aware of myself. I did need a place where I could discover parts of myself that I did not even know were waiting to be discovered. I needed a place to find my voice. So perhaps it was never really a cage. Perhaps it was a greenhouse. So this is where I am. So I am finally beginning to understand that my environment is part of my art. The people I spend time with, the books that I read, the places I visit, the conversations I have, the way I care for my body, the way I spend my time and finances all become my material, and they all shape the woman that I become. All of it shapes the work, all of it shapes the future. And I'm creating, I'm investing, I'm experimenting, I'm learning, I'm living, I'm becoming increasingly comfortable with the fact that not every beautiful thing I invest in will immediately pay me back. Some things are investments, and some things, it could be that I have expensive hobbies, and I have accepted that. And perhaps this is what this chapter is really giving me. Not a finished life, not a guaranteed return, but the time, space, relationships, and experiences with enough perspective to become someone capable of building a great life. I created that cage because I needed somewhere to grow safely. And now I'm building the doors because I am ready to explore what I've grown into. Okay, so that was my podcast and storytelling continuation of how I ended up living with my mom. I hope that you found some value there. I feel like it's so great to do reflection a few times a year and to have that quiet time. So that's where I'm at, and I've created at least 6 pieces of writing for that topic. And I look forward to chatting more about that. What you can expect moving forward is that I have this storytelling element, like I said I would. And I'll also have my theories and exciting ideas that are more scientific positioning to discuss, so that there's a contrast of the science and the lifestyle alongside some of my guests that I've interviewed. Okay.